Hey, Mike Ratner here for mikesmastermind.com. So today we're going to talk about the phenom. The phenom is sort of my shortened version of a word that's called phenomenon. And phenomenon, which we all know in some degree, is like it's a phenomenon. So from a social philosopher's point of view, the phenomenon is all around us. And it's the appreciation and the scientific study, or at least a willingness to explore and to go deep into what I describe as the phenom. And so I'm calling it phenom because I don't know any other word for it. And if you are someone who studied in the literature, sociology, psychology, phenomenology, philosophy, well, tell me if there's another word because I just don't know. It doesn't mean that I know it all, although I act it. The phenom. So the phenomenon in the regard of, you could say, Husserl's work and Heidegger, there is an experience happening. And that is a phenomenon. And so phenomenology is the study of our experience. So in me calling it the phenom, I am talking about the experience. Something's happening, and let's just give it a label. However it is, at the first impression, we'll call it the phenom, okay? We can go into other details in the process of why we would call it a phenomenon. But the study, though, is to sort of recognize that we are having an experience. And so let's take the experience apart in a way that we can better, you could say, experience it, at the same time understand from a social science point of view what's happening to us in our society, what's happening in our individual experiences, the things that might be sort of markers in a course of destiny, which means that the miles we put on ourselves and in our messed up world. You got to come up with more of my writing at mikesmastermind.com, which is this podcast. I do have a real mastermind, but this is my podcast. But you can find more of my writing at grandtourideas.com, where I give you a little bit more depth, but it's still just a tidbit that then links to more. But at least it's all kind of convalesced there. And that's grandtourideas.com, grandtourideas.com. I do not have the phenom up there yet, but this relates to my writing called Weltslosh, which is its own website. Weltslosh. So for your German-speaking peeps out there, it's like, oh, that's interesting. You made a word out of world and building. So, but a finer building I relate to as a dwelling. So I examine our ontological experience, the study in the way of being, and for us to refine it as ultra being. So if you want to be new agey and esoteric, yeah, it would be sort of the master of the moment. So what would this master of the moment be? Well, for one sense, it would be, right, I awareness. How am I? And how is it relating in my phenom, right? Or to my phenom? So we could say top of mind awareness. However, in the worlds of mass trance, that awareness, if it's directed outward, is what I call illusion. Now, it's different from illusion, but not too far apart. The illusion exists in the imagination, so we know it's illusion. But when we're alluding to something, we tend to believe that it's real, but it's perceived only in mind, and it's always out there. Once that out there problem is solved, we're going to be great. You know, whether it's money problems, health related. So something else has to happen, like hopefully your ship comes in, your luck will change, destiny redirects its course. So as long as we picture things out there, we have to have an awareness. And this is actually the true essence of I-awareness, to come into fruition of one's sense of self. Now, it doesn't mean that we become egocentric or so absorbed in ourselves. No, it's a sense of self. How am I ultra being present? This is some pretty deep stuff, because few people take time out, even the meditators, the yoga dudes, people who go on these fasts and retreats. They might come close to it, but so few are silent, quiet within themselves. They're always tick, 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 tick. And even though I talk a lot on the philosophy, I am, believe it or not, pretty much empty inside. It's just flowing. I'm not working off a script. I speak about what's coming to me, but I know what I want to talk about today, which is the phenom. And this is what we're experiencing right now. Every moment in your life, you are in some kind of phenomenon. So it's an experience. It's understanding the structures of our experience. And this is what relates to the CARES model, how we can do community action research on the quality of enlightenment, which takes place in our engagement. So it's the engagement of the experience that we're having, knowing that we're having an experience. And we could be in reaction to that experience, repelled by it, or pushed that way, yin and yang, right? The flow of the world, topsy-turvy, whatever. So you could say you could have a moment with it. And this is where at least the test, and the testing is of mastery in the moment, is to have this sort of sense of I-awareness. So let's talk about this I-awareness. So the first sense, really ultimately, and I'll give you a formula, is there's a couple ways to go about this. So the I-awareness is sort of like, well, how am I ultra being present? How does it show up? For most people, they're having a thought about the experience, right? And yet they're not fully cognizant or aware of what it is that they are thinking, even though supposedly they are the thinker of the thought, but they seem to be kind of removed from the awareness of what the thought implies. And it kind of becomes what I call an RTP, which is a repeated thought pattern, because it's repeating over and over and over. And the science behind it, and people who've documented thought patterns, 6,000 times a day, people might be having that same thought. That's incredible to think that someone would even be thinking that much. But it's just sort of a ball bouncing off a wall or a fly. And nothing's getting resolved. Nothing's really changing except the person is just maybe, perhaps, well, they're stuck, but maybe they're getting worse. I'm talking about stress levels, anguish, financial means, friendships, fellowships, the quality of relationships, and all sorts of engagement in their world, which affects our contribution to community and ultimately society and the world at large. This is Weltslosh. It's the examination of the world that we're in and the quality of we're doing. Welt for world and slosh. I love the word slosh. And that is simply, which stands for what we've built in our building and the examination of our dwelling in it. So we can kind of imagine, and people call it a paradigm, sort of the immediacy of the moment. And I have a word for this as well, called metasphere. We often talk about what's the atmosphere of the room, Bob? What's the climate going on? The social fabric. So it's this idea of an atmosphere that's all around us, pretty well recognized in architecture, a feeling of a space. So in the MESS dimension, which is matter, energy, space, and time, which is the physics of our universe, ask any physicist, that is what it is. We can examine the phenomenon through the structures of this matter, energy, space, and time. So this would be our relationship to the MESS, which is a fabric, right? It's of the universe. We're all composed of this in this world, right? In the physical plane. So as social scientists doing this CARES model, community action research, how we're engaging this fabric is the phenomenon. Because we're all having a thought about it, Bob. And our thinking is telling us something, but few of us are really engaged with it. And so we're not really even examining the quality of our words, the life sentences we give people, what we're saying, particularly when kids are around, other people. We're just repeating stuff, no thought behind it, or something else that, is being said, kind of affecting the metasphere, this atmosphere felt between us. And that ultimately is going to affect the space, which we'll talk about in this Weltslosh dwelling. So we have TWA, thoughts, words, and actions. This is what's reflected in this moment, because the person's having a thought, they're expressing it through the quality of some words, so that implies things, and it's an act, right? Some actions, reactions. This is the phenomenon. Now, as social scientists, how we approach it, we would come into the metasphere, and this was taught to me by Happy Face, Dr. David Jubb, when we were in Sedona, and I walked into a health food store, and in his word, in the Jubb tribe, I'm Grey Wolf. And I was like, Grey Wolf, you just gave away your energy, mate. It's like, what? So you just walked in the store, all the bright lights, the packaging, the products, you are gone, mate. You see, if you're going to be a master of the moment, you need to be present and catch these things. So I knew in his, and it is a scientific view, you have to ask, well, what's the syntax? The syntax is a strategy, or you could say mode of procedure. If you're going to have a lab experiment going on, you're trying to create something, it would be a formula. So what would it be to become present? Well, first, this quality of engagement has to be within ourselves, right? Because this is our own internal states of experience. So this is introspection. And this is something worthwhile to contemplate if you have to meditate. All right, but here, no, not but, and here, we have this engagement with I. So what would this be, I? First, check in on posture, your breath. Ultimately, we're checking in on the sensory dynamic with how am I feeling. So if I'm sensing something going on, it could be intuitive, vestibular, kinesthetic, coming from your gut, it's really important to check in on this, just like the TWA. There's going to be some thinking on that. So what am I listening to in this regard? So I'm feeling something. What is it telling? What is my interpretation? And this can only come through me really examining something. I have a feeling for it. Now I'm going to put it in some kind of construct. So it's words that have some kind of reflection on what it is that I'm feeling. What is it that I'm saying about it to myself, perhaps unconsciously? And so now I'm tuning into something that can tell me something. This is true intuition, because if you have a gut feeling that you shouldn't go in that room or cross the street right at that particular moment and you see a huge semi go by and 5 seconds ago that you didn't see, but you felt something. And for those people that didn't, well, the question is, did they have some kind of sensory experience before something happened? Because something as a force is causing us to act in this world. And the flight again, the TWA, thoughts, words, and actions have to be reflective of this I, sense of self. And this identity is internal dialogue. It's what we're saying to ourselves, about ourselves, our impression of what's going on. So starting from a feeling first is a good way, because it's kind of like radar. What am I feeling first? And then you can examine where it's coming from. But first you have to know what it is it's telling you. Or at least, what are you saying about it? What are you interpreting about things? And you check in this way. And now you can begin to weigh things out. Is that correct? Or am I operating out of fear or delusion? I get the wrong impression because I didn't check in? And the other side is maybe you needed to ask that person, hey, I've been thinking this. Is that what you're thinking? I interpreted this happening. Is that what really happened? Could you explain it, if that's what it did or if it didn't? This clarification within ourselves allows sort of a conscious a congruency, you could say. So this is the quality of our connection. And if this isn't figured out as far as the CARES model, what do we have as social scientists when we experience the phenom? Okay, so I come into a sensory exploration. What is it that I'm feeling? What is it that I'm sensing? And I can check in with myself, my breathing. How are my shoulders, my posture? Are my feet grounded? This is a great place to start, because if I'm hyperventilating and I'm going around like this, that means I'm in a reverse field, in the same way that the shaman called out the gray wolf at this health food store in Sedona. I love health food stores. I've been going to them since I was a kid. I met the true love of my life at a health food store. So it's like incredible to me. So, of course, when I'm in a place where there's products, you can do that, in a pharmacy. It's like, wow, look at all this stuff here. But coming from a first sense of where this is appealing, where is it coming from? So that I could stand, you could say, in a bit more of a detached manner, where other people are in the projection or the illusion. They're living this experience in their minds. Of course, we all are, because it's all made up. We've just given it definitions and proper vocabulary in some degree. So the syntax is this formula of how we come into this, you could say, the space. And this is the metasphere. And it has to start with, how am I feeling in the space? What am I sensing? Someone who's really acute to this, they can walk in a room and they can kind of tell that something had just occurred. They weren't there, but maybe there was an argument or something happened. There is something I call a residuum, but like a residue of something. People call it the vibe, whatever. You just sort of have a feeling for it. So it's giving recognition to what it is we already have as sort of tools. And these tools are tools for transformation and transmission. So we ought to be a bit more attuned. What's happened in our culture, and this is what happened to the gray wolves in the health food store, we reverse things to now where, feeling and listening to things are sort of all mixed into a visual feature, right? Just like you're watching this. So we've become a visual culture, but worse, it's a hyper-visual culture. So we're seeing so many images, we can't keep up with it. And this is in a visual field. It's causing a distortion, because the amount of information coming into us and what's being sort of regurgitated, garbage in and garbage out, is affecting the structures of our phenom, this experience of society. And this is what my work is, because I'm fascinated by it. I always have been. I just didn't have terms for it. I saw things, I felt things, and sometimes I let them control me because I thought I could manipulate them. So like, hey, I've got a skill that I don't think anybody else has, so I can put one on everybody or take advantage of the moment. Maybe it's what all kids in my karmic pattern or condition of growing up do. You sort of test the limits to what you're capable of, but maybe in a negative way, in a bad way. So this is my karma, working it off, right? So we want to evolve consciousness, right, to where we can really be of service and we can fulfill what would be our potential divine destiny. What I mean by divining, we're filtering out the best. This is my contribution to you because I want to be of service. I want to be of use. And I want to be your best friend ever. So where do we begin from? And it is weird, right? Because we're all in a different phase of our experience in the Phenom. We're in a certain age right now, right? I'm making this recording as we go right exactly in the middle of the 2020s. And I started noticing this stuff back as a kid in the 70s. So it's sort of like, wow, the way things have evolved and where I expect them to go, we are about to take a quantum leap, and I call it the XQ. And I want to talk about that next because I think it's an important distinction into how we show up in the Phenom. And if we're going to maximize the experience and really divine and filter it to where we have the full appreciation and awareness, so it's eye awareness, right? What is it that I'm feeling? This sensory input, what is it saying to me? What am I listening to? What am I hearing? And then, and only then, can I get the true visual picture, at least an examination to where I can share perspectives with you, and the input coming back is something we share, and then it widens. The colors become more richer, the textures. And now, two heads better than one, or we do this as a community, so communityconversations.com. So we begin a tribe of our own, self-liberation movement. We just simply exemplify what this is about, and that's the way that we magnify it and move forward. So I'm looking for fellow explorers and to go into the Phenom, this phenomenon that we have, this life that we all are experiencing, maybe to different degrees and filters and angles, that's okay. If we can open up the dynamic rather than the inputs, the garbage in and garbage out, the programming that's been done in us, the socialization, the conditioning that I call mass trance. Yes, the hypnosis of society, masstrance.com. It's a very serious condition because how are we going to ever evolve a desirable, sustainable future if we're all polarized? If we've all been sort of programmed to buy that particular consumer product, and your choice is, toothpaste brand A and B, and if you're in the alternative, you get C. So, this consumerist, capitalist, whatever you want to call it, is it in our best interest to evolve society? And are we being ignorant by people who, just deny climate change and think everything's just all right or there's going to be a third coming? So it's sort of like, I don't know what it's about, other than this is a phenom. And to explore it, and of course, just like, being careful about rocking the boat, keeping afloat, walking the razor's edge, the middle ground between yes and no, right and wrong, is simply to be the observer. And this is the CARES model of a good, you could say, social scientist, community action research, examining what is enlightened engagement. How can I engage the phenom in a way that's going to break through? This will be the transformation, right? The change we're all looking for, that's sustainable, delightful, equitable, easy to put on. So it's not like giving people a hard time, no blood in the streets. It's simply recognition. Everyone's included because at some point, even the worst person has to wake up, right? And that's what the challenge is because I saw what the goal was. Okay? What more has to be said about that? So check it out. Examine your phenom. What is it that I'm feeling? What is it I'm sensing? What am I saying or listening? What's it telling me? And now I can see what's going on. And I could be wrong in my interpretations, and that's where you're open to sort of interpretation, right? And appreciation of different people's experiences, diverse perspectives, and honoring it. Even if some people you consider to be really, something's going on with them. That's their experience in the here and now. That's their phenom. And some people have it very hard. Not necessarily easy to be in the phenom for some. However, for those that are fortunate to be able to be present to the experience and recognize that this is a gift no matter what the conditions are, that is special because that transcends, right? And this is our ability then to be present in this way for other people, to help them transcend, not adding more weight on their back or making them wrong. It's not easy because sometimes I point out and I go, it's so obvious. The emperor has no clothes. Why don't you see it? This is our challenge. Work with me on this. This is community conversations on a conscious level, loving conversations between you and I that appreciates our intimacy. This is where we take it to the next level because we are together in this as a team. Friendship fellowship, right? Self-liberation movement, egoism, whatever it would be. Check it out. I'm MikeRatner.com, Mike'sMastermind.com. I hope you got something. Thank you.